Hello everyone and welcome to the semi-finals of the Champions Chester Finals. It is Fabiano Caruana versus Magnus Carlsen, and this is the fifth game of their match, which means it's an Armageddon game. After the four games that were really interesting, if you guys have the time, watch the entire match live or the recording of the live session. Because it's really action-packed. It started by Magnus winning game 1, then Fabi retaliated in game 2, took the lead in game 3, and then Magnus won on demand in game 4, forcing Armageddon. And as usual in Armageddon, you have to bid your time. It's better to play with the black pieces because you only need a draw to win the match. And I think so far, pretty much no one ever outbid Magnus. He always, as he is objectively the best player in the world, he will allow himself to play with as little time as possible. I think once he even outbid Hikaru by like a second or 2 seconds, that's how how good he is at this bidding war thing. But yeah, let's check it out. Fabi has the white pieces and he opens with e4 and Magnus replies with c5. You can see 8 minutes 54 seconds for him and 15 minutes for Fabi. So I think Magnus bid like 8 minutes and 57 seconds. We have knight to f3, pawn to e6, and now pawn to d4. Going for the open Sicilian, captures, and now pawn to a6. Magnus challenges Fabi to a Khan Sicilian, where it's a bit of a different setup. You start out with your pawns without the knight ever being on f6. So the white pawn on e4 is not hanging, and Fabi has quite a lot of options to choose from. Like he could even go for the Marozzi bind setup, which is which a lot of people enjoy playing. But he challenges Magnus to a more direct approach. Knight to c3, queen to c7, and now bishop to d3. We have knight to f6 and queen to e2. Castling here is by far the most popular. Fabi wants to surprise Magnus a little bit. Queen to e2. We have pawn to d6 and now pawn to f4. Knight b to d7. So of course you know that the knight is coming to c5 to pressure the bishop and the central pawn. And pawn to g4. A pretty standard way of challenging the knight here. We want to play g5 and then h4. h5 and attack the black king, as you're probably betting that the black king will castle kingside. Knight to c5 by Magnus and now pawn to g5. Challenging the knight here, knight f to d7 and now pawn to a4 first, stopping pawn to b5, bishop to e7 and now pawn to h4. Now the pawn is nicely defended. You might even consider something like f5 very soon. And there are a couple of games where this position has been reached, but interestingly in the positions, I've even found one game where this position has been reached, but it was white's move. So somehow through all of this back and forth action, Magnus won a move somewhere, because there is a game where this exact same position happened and white played h5, whereas here we have black on the move and Magnus plays pawn to b6. So it is now, as of move 12, that we have a completely new game. And okay, of course he wants the fianchetto to the light square bishop, get the rook into the game. Fabi continues development, bishop to e3 and now bishop to b7. We have pawn to h5, continuing to play on the king side, rook to c8. Of course, you will want to put more pressure on that c file, and at some point, of course, you will execute b5 to break through. Fabi goes rook to g1. He wants to open up the g file, but Magnus stops that. He plays pawn to g6 himself. Rook back to h1. Now Fabi wants to open up the h file, and now pawn to e5, challenging the knight. We have h captures on g6, trying to sacrifice the knight here. But of course, that would be pretty silly, because if you take the knight here, then bishop captures on d4, and you have all sorts of problems here. The rook is hanging. If you move the rook, then the pawn advances, and you'll just get demolished here. But an interesting idea could have occurred in the game, because here we have f captures on g6, and now what do you play here? Well, Fabi went back, knight to f3, because the knight is hanging, but he should have stuck to his guns here and played pawn to f5. The problem is now, if Magnus plays e captures on d4, and it's not really a problem, it's the best move, e captures on d4 and bishop captures attacking the rook, it is a little bit different. Even if knight captures on d3 happens, okay, c captures on d3, you remove an attacker, let's say rook to g8, f6. And now, once rook captures on h7 happens, that's pretty much it. Even if you repeat something, well, there's really nothing to repeat. You can play h5 because you really don't want to see rook captures on h7. Now even rook to f1, threatening f7 check. And if rook to f8, now you will take, and you are now very happy with your position. For example, captures, queen captures on f1, king will capture here. You'll play rook c1. You have nice action on the queen here. The knight can move. The f6 is well under white's control, so this would be winning for Fabi. But he went back, knight to f3, and now e captures on f4. Now Magnus will trade as much as possible before starting an attack on the queen side. Bishop captures, knight captures on d3 with check, c captures, and now knight to e5, making it a bit problematic for Fabi to now create some sort of an attack. And while bishop captures on e5 is the best move, and Fabi probably knows it, it doesn't give him much of an attacking position. So he wants to keep material on the board. He plays bishop e3, prepares to put the bishop on d4. We have castles now by Magnus, and now the rook is no longer on h8, and the h7 pawn is nicely defended by the king. And now knight to d4, going after this e6 square. Queen to d7 defending, and now queenside castles. And here king to d2 is the way to go. With queenside castles, you allow Magnus to start the attack right away because the knight on c3 is pinned, and he does so by playing pawn to b5. And okay, a captures, you have to move the king to b1. Now pawn to b4. We have knight to a2, and now comes pawn to d5. And here we reach a most unpleasant position for Fabi because there's not all that much you can do here. Problem is, if you just capture this, then White's position is just terrible. There's not much you can do here. You can even shift the rooks to the a file. The bishop is here. The other rook can come to the c file. This would be really bad. But the critical line to calculate is knight to f5. And look at what is possible here. G captures on f5. Now you're going to play bishop to d4. Okay, you want to win your piece back. And after bishop to d6, you will play g6. And now, after knight captures on g6, you'll play rook d to g1. And look at how beautiful this position is for White. Of course, it's still objectively winning for Black, but, you know, with little time on the clock, maybe it's possible to get something here. The idea is that after captures, you will play rook captures on g6 check, h captures, rook to h8 check. Now you will win the black queen. And after king to 8, rook captures on d7 and king captures on d7. But still, it's two rooks against the queen, and you have these passed pawns marching forward. It's not going to be easy for White to survive this. But maybe it was a little bit better than what Fabi went for. He went for rook captures on h7, which again is one of the engine's recommendations, but it doesn't offer much. King captures on h7, queen to h2 with check, king to g8, and now rook to h1. Here, interestingly, if you go after the knight, it doesn't really do all that much. Just bishop to d6, and the queen has to be traded. You don't have time to get the rook into the attack. You're going to have to trade queens here. And after knight captures, just rook f3, and Black's position is much better. So here, Fabi threw in rook to h1. He threatens checkmate on h7, but there is a move that he probably missed, and it is the move that wins Magnus the game. So feel free to pause the video and try to figure out a way out of this mess while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on realizing that the two weaknesses can be dealt with one move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to d6. This is what Magnus played, and now Fabi really doesn't have all that much. The knight is defended, the h7 square is guarded. What do you play here? Well, you could still go for queen to h8, but queen to h8 is such a long, disgusting line that I absolutely will show it. And that starts with queen to h8 check, king f7, now rook h7 check. Okay, you're gonna hide the king on e8, and now, okay, you can win the black queen, but you will also have to give up your own queen. But it is the best thing to do. Rook captures on d7, rook captures on h8, and you even pick up the bishop on d6, but it doesn't matter because there's rook to h1 with check, and now after knight to c1, there's knight captures on d3, piling up on the knight here, and you will start losing material. It doesn't matter. Even if you play knight e2, you bring another defender to the knight. Look at White's position. All of the pieces are tied down to the defense of the knight on c1, and you can't even defend it. d4. You try to get the bishop away from the defense of the knight, and if bishop d2, now you even trade. Knight captures, and bishop captures on e4 with check. King to a2, now bishop to c2. Controlling b1 and b3. Now you're threatening checkmate, and once White stopped this, now you advance further. Rook to d1, you attack the bishop, and once the bishop moves, just d3 with the d2 will win you the game. It's possible to maybe play something like knight to b3, but still, just bishop to b1 check, king to a1, now pawn to d2, and that's all there is. There's no way to defend this anymore. If you capture the pawn, just bishop to e4 with check, king to a2, bishop to d5 with check. And after knight to b3 blocking, you will play rook to d3, and that's pretty much it. If you move king to b1, bishop captures on b3 with rook d1 next, it's game over. So, well, white can prolong, I mean, it's merely prolonging. So Fabi played bishop to f4, he realized that queen to h8 will not yield a victory, and now Magnus played queen to g7, which is interesting. Queen to g7 is the only not winning move for Magnus. He can play bishop to a6, he can play d captures on e4, he can play b3, but remember, he needs only a draw here to win the match, so he plays queen to g7, he stops queen h8, now he doesn't have to calculate anymore, and he says, you cannot beat me here. So Fabi does go knight e6, attacks the queen and the rook, but there's also knight to f3 attacking the queen here. And now Fabi does have some choices here, but none of them really work, as the bishop here has to be defended. The bishop is attacked twice. If you play queen g3, then look at this. Bishop captures on f4, queen captures on f3, and now there's this very nasty queen captures on b2 move, just nicely aligning the queen with the rook, and also you will save the bishop so you don't lose too much material. Bishop to f4 will, bishop to e5 will come with check, and okay, even d4 you can play that, but now rook captures on f3, and after d captures on e5, d captures on e4, and the pawn now will be too powerful. You're also up the exchange, so completely winning. Another thing Fabi could do is play queen to h3. Looks a bit weird because you remove the defender of the bishop here, but after rook captures on f4 and knight captures on g7 grabbing the queen, there's an instant draw. Knight to d2 check, king will have to move to h1 as the c1 square is covered by the rook, so king h1, and here Magnus easily gets a perpetual with knight to d2, knight to b3 checking action. So Fabi had a huge problem here because he has to win. He cannot draw the game. He plays knight captures on g7, and he just goes into a losing endgame. Knight captures on h2, bishop captures on d6, and now rook to f1 with check. Rook captures, knight captures, and the real problem is also here, you cannot defend the knight on g7. The problem is if you try to save it, let's say knight to e6, then you fall to knight to d2 check, king to a1, and now knight to b3 with check, king b1, and d captures on e4, where you have to decide what you play. You either allow the pawn to march forward, or you capture here, and this is mate in 1, bishop captures on e4 is checkmate, or you allow the pawn to survive, but, I mean, what do you play? Bishop captures, then the pawn comes to d3, and, well, that's all there is. Not much to be done here. So after knight captures on f1, Fabi said, all right, I have to leave the knight stranded. He played bishop captures on b4, and Magnus eliminates the lonely knight off the board. King captures on g7, and now he is up a full rook, so of course it's completely winning. Fabi played a few more moves, you know, because it's, you know, it's hard to resign after having a 4-game match against Magnus and holding your own. Now you're just dead lost, and you will of course play a few more moves. D captures on e4, D captures, bishop captures with check, king a2, and now knight to e3. And it was in this position on move 39 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, and with it the first semifinal match, as it is a set of 2 matches, so he will have a chance to bounce back today. So yeah, like I said, if you guys have the time, do watch the entire show. It's been I mean, brutal. I mean, also game 1 where Magnus just gives up the queen, and he has two pawns and a rook against Fabi's queen. Magnus was dead lost, but then Fabi made a mistake. First he gave Magnus a drawing position, and then he also gave him just a winning position, but both players with a few seconds on the clock. I mean, it was pure madness. If you have the time, watch the entire thing. Really, you guys will enjoy it. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Robert Arathun, Sam's Giant Tortoise Farm, The Night Before Christmas, Good Luck on Law School Finals, Cam V, and Benjamin Heiberger for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day, and I will very soon announce my Christmas tournament, but very soon. See you soon.